Relationships are supposed to bring peace. They should make life feel a little lighter. When you're with someone who truly sees you, respects you, and supports you, it feels like you're standing on steady ground, even when life throws chaos your way. But not every relationship feels like that. Some feel heavy, confusing, or quietly painful. And the worst part is, when you're in it, it's hard to tell. There's no clear alarm bell. Toxic relationships don't always start with shouting matches or visible mistreatment. They often begin with little compromises, slow changes, or quiet doubts. One day, you're questioning a strange comment. A few months later, you're questioning yourself. And by the time it becomes clear, you might already be emotionally drained, unsure of what's real anymore. Understanding the signs of a toxic relationship isn't just about identifying abuse. It's about learning how certain behaviors, even subtle ones, can erode your sense of self over time. And once you recognize them, you can start making decisions that are healthy for your well-being, even if that means facing some hard truths. One of the earliest signs is emotional disorientation. You feel confused more often than not. You can't explain why you're upset, but you are. Or you find yourself apologizing constantly, even when you didn't do anything wrong. That kind of mental fog is common in toxic dynamics, especially when one partner subtly shifts blame or twists conversations. They might not scream or insult, but they'll change the tone of every disagreement until you're not sure what even happened. Over time, your confidence fades. You stop trusting your own memory or instincts. There's something psychologists call gaslighting, a term that comes from a 1938 play where a man manipulates his wife into thinking she's losing her mind. In toxic relationships, gaslighting doesn't always look like dramatic lies. It can sound like, "You're overreacting," or "You're remembering that wrong." And the more it happens, the more you start believing you're the problem. Then there's the issue of isolation, not always physical. Emotional isolation can feel just as lonely. Maybe your partner subtly discourages your friendships. They might roll their eyes when you talk about your friends or say things like, "You don't need them, you have me." At first, that might seem like affection, but it slowly limits your support system. You begin to withdraw from others, not because you want to, but because it feels easier, less drama, less tension, and suddenly, you're alone in the relationship and outside of it. According to a study by the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 60% of people in emotionally abusive relationships report feeling isolated from family and friends. That isolation isn't a coincidence. It's a tactic, whether intentional or not, that keeps control within the relationship. A more subtle but equally harmful sign is inconsistency. Some days your partner is warm, funny, and affectionate. Other days they're cold or distant, and you're left guessing what you did wrong. That unpredictability keeps you on edge. It creates a reward-punishment cycle, where you cling to the good days and blame yourself for the bad ones. That's not love. That's emotional volatility disguised as passion. Over time, you start working harder and harder to earn love that should be given freely, and when the good moments do come, they feel like a relief. Not joy, just relief. That kind of emotional roller coaster is draining, and it keeps people stuck, always chasing the version of their partner they met in the beginning. Another warning sign is control, though it often doesn't look like control. It might look like concern. Are you really going to wear that? Or, I just want to know who you're with. But over time, those questions become rules. You start editing yourself, checking your phone less, being careful not to say the wrong thing, not because you want to, but because you don't want to fight. That's not love keeping you safe. That's fear keeping you silent. True partnership thrives on freedom. If you feel like you're being monitored or evaluated constantly, that's not a relationship, that's surveillance. And you deserve more than that. Sometimes, the toxicity shows up through criticism. Not once, not twice, but constantly. Every choice you make is questioned. Your ideas are dismissed, your dreams are minimized, and even the way you laugh or talk is criticized. After a while, you stop sharing, you begin to shrink. And slowly your world gets smaller and quieter, not because you've changed, but because your spirit has been worn down. Healthy relationships allow you to expand. You should feel more like yourself with your partner, not less. If you're constantly adjusting your tone, your personality, or your choices to keep the peace, that's a sign something deeper is wrong. One of the more hidden signs is a lack of accountability. Your partner never takes responsibility. Every argument is someone else's fault. Maybe it's their ex, their parents, or even you, but it's never them. And when you bring up something that hurt you, they flip it. Suddenly, you're the one who's selfish, or dramatic, or too sensitive. That's not just frustrating, it's manipulative. Relationships require ownership. When someone can't admit they were wrong, even once, it means they're more invested in control than connection. It becomes less about resolving issues and more about winning. And in a healthy relationship, no one should be trying to win. There's also a common myth that if there's no physical violence, the relationship isn't toxic. But toxicity isn't just about bruises or shouting. It's about the way someone makes you feel about yourself over time. If you feel drained, anxious, or afraid more often than you feel safe, that's a toxic environment. Even if there are no raised voices, even if there are no threats, silence can be just as damaging. So can indifference or passive aggression. And finally, perhaps the most painful sign of all, you don't recognize yourself anymore. You've changed, not in a growing, evolving way, but in a quiet, hollow one. You second-guess your choices, you hesitate before you speak, you walk on eggshells every day. And you've forgotten what it feels like to just be at ease. That's not normal. That's survival mode. You were not meant to survive in your relationship. You were meant to live, thrive, and feel safe enough to show up fully as you are. So why do people stay in toxic relationships? It's not always weakness. It's not always fear. Sometimes it's hope. The hope that things will get better, the belief that the real version of their partner, the one they saw in the beginning, will come back. And sometimes they do, for a week or a day, but if that version never stays, it's not love. It's a cycle. According to the American Psychological Association, the average person in an emotionally abusive relationship attempts to leave 7 times before they actually do. That doesn't mean they're weak. It means the emotional hooks run deep. Breaking free starts with clarity. Naming what you're experiencing, saying the word toxic out loud, telling someone you trust, reading stories like your own. The more you see it, the harder it is to unsee, and that's when change begins. You're not asking for too much. You're not being dramatic. You're simply remembering that you matter. Love should feel safe. Relationships should bring peace. You should be able to breathe in your own home, with your own partner, in your own skin. If that's not happening, it might be time to ask some honest questions and be brave enough to hear the answers. Toxic relationships don't always start with storm clouds. Sometimes they begin with deep connection, laughter, even what feels like destiny. That's why leaving feels so confusing. It's not just about walking away from someone. It's about walking away from the version of yourself that believed this was real, and from the memories that still feel warm, even when the present feels cold. One thing that makes toxic dynamics especially tricky is how much they blur the lines. It's not always obvious when love turns into control or care turns into manipulation. That's why we tend to rationalize things. We say they're just stressed or it's only because they care. And that might be true, but here's what matters. Is it harming you? Even if your partner has a reason for their behavior, it doesn't mean you have to tolerate it. Understanding someone's pain is not the same as accepting their harm. You can be empathetic and still protect yourself. That balance is what many people struggle with, especially if they've grown up believing love means endurance or loyalty above all. Here's a different way to think about it. If you saw your best friend in your exact situation, what would you tell them? Would you tell them to keep trying harder, or would you tell them they deserve better? It's often easier to see clearly when you're looking from the outside, but you deserve that same clarity. People often ask, what if it's just a rough patch? And yes, every relationship has hard times. Every couple fights. But the difference between a rough patch and a toxic pattern is consistency. In healthy relationships, even during hard times, you feel fundamentally respected. You feel safe. You can disagree without feeling devalued. You can apologize without being humiliated. And when someone hurts you, they take responsibility, not just with words, but with changed behavior. In toxic relationships, those apologies often become empty. They might sound sincere, but nothing really changes. You hear the same promises over and over. I'll do better. That won't happen again. But it does. And each time you lose a little more trust. Not just in them, but in yourself. That loss of self-trust is perhaps the most damaging part. You stop believing your instincts. You hesitate to make decisions. You feel paralyzed, like nothing you do is right. That mental exhaustion can lead to anxiety, depression, even physical symptoms like headaches, fatigue, or chronic stress. Studies have shown that toxic relationships can impact not just mental health but physical health too. The stress hormone cortisol increases, sleep is disrupted, immune systems weaken, and over time the body begins to break down. That's how deep these effects go. A toxic relationship is not just bad vibes. It can become a health issue. So what can you do if you're in one? The first step isn't necessarily leaving, it's awareness. Recognize the pattern. Say the truth to yourself, even if you're not ready to say it out loud. That awareness is powerful. It brings choice back into your hands. Then, build support. Toxic relationships thrive in silence and isolation. The more you open up, to a friend, a therapist, a support group, the more perspective you gain. You realize you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you're not weak. You're someone who's been navigating a hard situation with strength you probably haven't even recognized. Leaving a toxic relationship takes time. Sometimes it's fast. Sometimes it's a long process of pulling away bit by bit. What matters is that each step you take toward health, whether that's setting a boundary, asking for space, or just journaling your thoughts, is a step toward freedom. For those who aren't in toxic relationships but know someone who might be, your role matters too. Don't judge them for staying, don't push them before they're ready. Instead, remind them who they are. Let them know they deserve peace. Be a mirror, not a hammer. There's a quote that says, "Love doesn't hurt, loving the wrong person does." That's not to say love is always easy, but at its core, love builds, love heals. Love doesn't erase you. If your relationship is taking more from you than it gives, if it's costing you your peace, your joy, your identity, then it's time to reevaluate what you're calling love. You deserve to feel heard, seen, and safe. You deserve affection without anxiety, laughter without fear, presence without pretense. And you deserve to wake up in the morning without a knot in your stomach, wondering which version of your partner you'll get that day. The truth is, healthy love is not loud. It doesn't demand everything you have just to stay afloat. It's consistent, it's honest, and it brings you home to yourself, not further away. The signs of toxicity aren't always big. Sometimes they're quiet. But if you're paying attention, they're always there, in how you feel, in what you've stopped doing, in what you no longer say out loud, and in who you're slowly becoming. If you've lost your spark, your voice, or your peace, that's not love's fault. That's the result of staying somewhere that doesn't honor who you are. You are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You are simply remembering your worth. One of the most liberating moments in life is when you stop asking, "How can I fix this?" and start asking, "Is this worth fixing?" That shift in mindset can change everything. Not because you don't care anymore, but because you start caring about yourself just as much. People in toxic relationships often carry guilt. Guilt for wanting out, guilt for feeling numb, guilt for still loving the person who hurts them. But feelings don't always follow logic. You can love someone and still recognize that being with them is damaging you. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Love isn't supposed to be perfect, but it should feel safe. It should make you better, not smaller. It should help you grow, not grind you down. The right relationship doesn't demand that you sacrifice your joy, your health, or your sense of identity. And if it does, then it might not be love. It might just be attachment or habit or fear of starting over. It's not always about leaving today. For some people, that's not possible yet, and that's okay. Sometimes the first step is simply telling the truth to yourself, that this isn't working, that it's hurting you, that you want something better. And then gradually things begin to shift. You set one small boundary, you talk to someone you trust, you write your thoughts down, you start seeing the patterns more clearly, and piece by piece you build the strength to either transform the relationship, with both partners fully committed, or to let it go. Remember, not all toxic relationships are romantic. These signs can show up in friendships, families, and workplaces too. Any place where someone's behavior consistently erodes your sense of safety, dignity, or self-worth deserves attention, and the same tools apply. Awareness, boundaries, support, and self-respect. You don't need to wait for things to get worse. You don't need to wait for a crisis. If you feel like something is wrong, that's enough reason to explore it. Your intuition is valid. Your peace is a worthy goal. And your happiness is not a luxury, it's a right. In the end, what we allow in relationships teaches others how to treat us. And what we accept often becomes our new normal. But you don't have to keep accepting less. You can choose again. You can decide that your life is too valuable to spend in survival mode. You can decide that love should not require constant repair. You can decide that who you are is already enough, and that any relationship that makes you doubt that isn't healthy. No matter where you are in your journey, whether you're still questioning, in the middle of breaking free, or rebuilding your life afterward, know this: healing is possible, and it's worth it. The quiet after the storm is real. The peace that comes when you no longer live under emotional tension is real. And the freedom to just be yourself again, that's one of the most powerful feelings in the world. You are not alone, and this chapter is not the end of your story.